there's something about experimentation and sort of that build, measure, learn, which I'd like to come back to. But I think there's something really interesting in that example about, time saving and the power of that as a metric for the right audience. So, if, like you said, for your finance director or your CFO, and the stakeholders involved with those decisions, that's a really, really powerful piece of information, and works well. How you got there probably is almost don't show you're working out for that audience. And I think that thing about actually that we need to be confident in knowing that we're managing as well as possible, and we're gathering data as well as possible within the operational efficiency of learning and development. That might not be what we communicate, but we know that we're confident that data is solid when we do communicate it. I think it also references then for other people. So it might be perhaps, I don't know, your marketing director is interested in, developing commercial skills. Time saved, perhaps less relevant. That would be useful, but they want to know the skills impact, and the capability, and then, how that affects their metrics. So I think there's something about choosing the information that, and developing our confidence around those business metrics and how we contribute to that feels really important.
Yeah, and I think many of our organizations, or not many of the organizations we necessarily work with, but from speaking from experience, their learning ecosystem is rather large at some of our larger clients. And one of the metrics that they have generally is to be able to reduce not the distractions, but the journey to be able to get there, because of the uncaptured inefficiency of having to search for information. The Netflix problem of spending 20 minutes to find something on Netflix that you want to watch. I think within many large organizations, one can spend 5 minutes searching for something, even at an organization the size of Valamis. We're 150 people, and we have lots of systems because we have lots of different teams, and being able to find that one voice of reason, or that one killer document about how to do something, can sometimes take a couple of minutes, or ideally we'd be able to snap our fingers and be able to do that. And I think with the introduction of various AI models or large language models, I'm sure that will improve over the next 12 months if many corporations open their doors and legal teams allow them to plug into one of these models. But there's so many kind of inefficiencies within work that it's not to say that we become an operations team and improve operations, but by being able to educate and improve people's skills to be able to pull things in one place, but then also give them the skills to kind of become more productive, I think is such a powerful thing. And something I think that I'm personally very passionate about. I hate inefficiency. It's a very personality fault, I think, or maybe something good about my personality. But from a economics point of view and from a GDP point of view, if you want to continue to grow as a country, one has to become more efficient and become more productive and maximize what you have. So I think it's something that I personally really would love to, like I say, hear more about. If organizations have fantastic case studies or experiments, to go back to what I said about the experimentation, so did it fail? I think one point I would make on that, in that kind of open request of send me information, is I used to work in the music industry, and I worked for a consultancy, and we went into record labels, management teams, and taught them about how to do various things. This was 2013. Set up your Facebook page, set up your Amazon page. But one thing that organization did was have a kind of best campaigns of the year, and it was a very prestigious thing. And we would get every record label or every management company want to be in that kind of the annual, this is what the best campaigns are. But we forced people to actually give us the insight of how they did it. So there's a real transparency about someone achieving an excellent result. And I would love our sector or our industry to be able to do that a little bit more. I find the kind of, similar with our podcast here, maybe, there's lots of discussion around how we can improve. But actually, I would love to see a little bit more detail of this is what we did, and we created a 5% increase. 5% can still be a very sexy number depending on the scale. And there's still a lot that we can learn in terms of that information share and transfer between organizations and partners.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that one of the ways that perhaps we can take some small steps, within our own organizations, is working with functions, to understand how do they do that. I think we always talk about learning should be more like marketing, but I think in one of the areas, particularly with digital marketing, that seems very successful and has created a lot of momentum, is that the ability to describe and explain, inputs and outputs and outcomes.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think there's something interesting about building those relationships, maybe working with the owners of data sources internally to help understand how can you correlate learning data with those data sources, etc. I think that's one of the ways you can start to to then expand that that sense of sort of working openly. I think the industry has some way to go in terms of standardizing. Actually, I think we've standardized some sort of technical areas up to a point, but I think that sort of openness and standardization of sort of operations and measurement will help. And I think there are ways of doing. I think there are ways of doing that without sort of sharing important secrets as well. A lot of industries do manage that. I think we've got some way to go. Although I'm quite optimistic that we can get there. Actually, I do think that sort of openness theme has never gone away, and perhaps it's gathering a bit more momentum more recently.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned the digital marketing again, because to go back to what we said about the importance of skills, I think the first time I was aware, let's say, of a more skill-specific strategy rather than a role-specific strategy was, I think in 2017, where the term in the marketing industry of a T-shaped marketer. And I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that, but it was the whole idea of foundational knowledge, which then you focus on one thing, whether that is paid for advertising, copywriting, so on and so forth. And it feels like that is slowly starting to become more prevalent across other industries and other roles of, you have to have a foundational knowledge, and you may have to have different levels of foundational knowledge, but that fine-tune and focus on a particular point, whether that's because you're passionate about it or whether it's because you're naturally very gifted in it, feels like we're obviously borrowing very different strategies from different parts of different industries, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And the thing that I love about my role, I listened to a podcast last weekend with Rory Sutherland. I don't know what his exact role is, but he works at Ogilvy, and he summarised his love for his role, and I would probably share exactly the same sentiment, which was the reason why he loves working in advertising is because every single interaction within his life is a learning point to be able to then affect what he does next. So an interaction with someone buying coffee could then change how he talks to a client about his interaction. And I think we're very lucky within our industry to do the same. I watched my daughter grow up and learn things, and it changed my perception of how people in my team may learn. And I think that's the beautiful thing and very inspiring thing about our sector and our roles. We're very privileged to be able to kind of apply every human interaction to kind of reform how we do things or how we can get people to learn. And I'd highly recommend that podcast episode. It's Rory Sutherland with Rick Rubin. It's a 4-hour podcast, so it's not really an episode, it's like an audiobook, but it is incredible in terms of human insights and behavioural sciences and psychology.